Hello, today I'll be talking a little bit about what loops is in JavaScript. So sometimes when we create the software, we need to write code that does something a lot of different times. So maybe we are, for example, drawing some circles. And let's say we had to draw 100 circles. So drawing a circle, if we said we did this in JavaScript like this, which we don't, but let's say we do, we would have to write circle, 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 like 100 times, right? And it would take quite a lot of time, of course. And for exactly this kind of use case where we need to run kind of the same line of code a lot of times, we use loops. And the loop that I will be talking about today is what is called the for loop. But before we talk about the for loop, let's talk about something else that we'll use just in a second. So in JavaScript, we can define a variable like this. So we create a variable called I that we set to 0. If we wanted to increment this, meaning if we wanted to add 1 to I, how would we do that? We would say I equals to I plus 1, like this. Now we would see that I is not equal to 0, but is equal to 1. So let's take a look at this here. 1. So we could do this maybe 2 more times. So I 0, now it's 1, now it's 2, now it's 3. And we see that I is equal to 3. So this way where we say the old value of I, the new value of I is equal to the old value here plus 1. There's a shortcut to write that in JavaScript, and we just say I plus plus. So this means increment I by 1, which is just like add 1 to I. So this should also be 3 because here it's 1, 2, 3. Yes, cool. Let's create our first loop. So how we write a for loop is we write for, and then we can say define a variable called I equal to 0. Let's comment this out so it's not confusing us too much. Then we say I should be smaller than 3 and I plus plus. And I'll explain just in a second what all of this means. Okay. Let's first try and see the output of this code here. So we see here that it's 0, 1, and 2. Okay, let's take a look at the code again. So what is this part? It has like 3 parts. You see this part, and then there's a semicolon, then there's a middle part, a semicolon, and then there's an ending part. Okay, this first part is kind of the starting condition. And I think if we go here, we can say this as we should start a counter that is called I with the value 0. Okay, so this is where our loop will start with 0. Then this expression here tells us when should we run this code here. Like when should we run it? We should run it when I is smaller than 3. Okay. So when I is smaller than 3, we run this code. So the last part is each time we run this code, or each time we run our loop, do this to I. And we just saw what that is up here. It means add 1 to I. Okay. So this is a starting condition. So we start at I is 0. We run this loop the amount of times where I is smaller than 3. And then each time we run this code, we add 1 to I. Cool. So I'm gonna draw a little bit of a table so we can very clearly see what is happening in this loop here. So let me just see here. So here I've drawn a table. And then I'll also say here that I is smaller than 3 was the thing. And then I'll write what we log out here. Okay, so to begin with, I is equal to 0. So then the JavaScript first asks, is I smaller than 3? I is now 0, so we ask, is 0 smaller than 3? Yes, it is. So that means we go in here. So let's write here, true, okay? Because we ask if 0 is smaller than 3, it is. So then we go here, and what do we log out? We log out the value of I, which is 0, okay? Now we have run this code once, and now it goes and applies this part, which is increment I by 1. So let's do that. So now I is equal to 1, okay? So is I smaller than 3? Is 1 smaller than 3? Yes, it is. That means we go to line 8 and we run the code here. So what do we log out? We log out 1. So with 2, so we log out 1, right? And then we apply this part which increments I by 1. So now we ask, is 2 smaller than 3? Yes, it is. True. Which means we run the code that logs out the 2. Now we increment I by 1 again. So now I is equal to 3. So we write 3 over here. And then we ask, is 3 smaller than 3? No, 3 is not smaller than 3. 3 is equal to 3, but it's not smaller than 3. That means we don't log out anything. Okay, so instead we jump out of the loop and then we go down here. Like this. So let's try and look at the logs. So we should see 0, 1, 2, but not 3, because 3 is not smaller than 3. Let's take a look. 0, 1, 2, and then loop done. Okay. Again, we can use the breakpoints here, where we can put a breakpoint, click here, and then we should be able to see that we log out I. Let's see, so now I is equal to 1, we go in here, we run this, I is now equal to 2, so that means we run the I, and now I will be equal to 3, so we shouldn't go into the I or into the code, and we don't. We just jump down here on line 11, and then log out loop is done. Okay, so again, that was when you put a breakpoint and you click on the little debugger, then you can kind of go through the program and see line for line what is actually happening. Cool. I will encourage you to draw this kind of diagram where you draw what the value of I is, and then if the loop will continue or not. It can be very helpful. Okay, so let's try and make a loop that runs from 30 to 10. Okay. Loop that runs from 30 to 10. Okay. Yes. Okay. So try and stop this video, pause it, and think a little bit about how you would do this. Okay. So from 30 to 10. So you can pause it, and I'll just begin in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. I hope you thought about it and maybe even written out the solution in code. That could be super cool. So how are we going to do this? Let's just comment this out so it's not confusing. So we'll say that I should be equal to 30, because that's where we start. It should run from 30 and then 29, 28, 27, 26, 25, and so forth. Okay? So that's the first thing. Where do we start? We start at I equals to 30. The next question is, when should we run this code? And that's maybe a little bit tricky to think about. But if we go from 30 to 10, then I want to make sure that I is larger than 9, I think. Maybe it's 9, maybe it's 10, but let's see. And then what is cool is that we don't want to add 1 to I. We actually want to subtract 1 from I, because we want to start with 30 and then 29, 28, and so forth. So we can actually write minus minus instead of plus plus. Okay? So let's try and see if this works. We write I here. So 30, 29, 24, blah, 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 all the way until 10. Okay? So why did I say that it should be larger than 9 and not 10? That's because if we set 10 here, okay, and now, so we've written out all the way down till 11, okay, so now we subtract 1 from 11, that means I is now equal to 10, okay, then we ask, is 10 larger than 10? It is not, so therefore we don't log out 10, we just go to 11, which we see here, because 10 is not larger than 10. But what we can do is we could put in a is larger than or equal to, because then when I is 10, it's not larger than, but it is equal to 10. And then we should see the 10 as we see here. Okay? Yes, that was it for now. Thank you so much. Bye.